and welcome to the final online session of the CESI close down. Someone's waving at me. Hi, Fiona. The Cross Consortia Industry and Key Partnership session. The CESI Consortium, I think, was over 50 different letters of support that the project got at the very start, and a number of those project partners were extremely engaged in the process all the way through. My name's Laura Brown. I'm the Networks and Innovation Manager at TNEI, and TNEI was a founding industrial partner on CESI. But I used to be doing the job that Rhiannon's doing now, and joined TNEI a year ago. So I was delighted, and thanks to Rhiannon and Lindsay for organising this session, and thanks to Professor Sarah Walker for inviting me to chair the session. So today we're going to talk about some of the industrial impact and research that's happened, either during CESI or directly because of CESI, and the partnerships that have been made. And we've got a range of excellent speakers lined up for you. So I want everyone to be mindful that we've got a lot of people to talk today. So 10 minutes each, please, and we'll start the clock as soon as you start chatting. I'll try and remember to give you a couple of minutes notice when we're near the end, just to let you know how fast you need to go through the last few slides. But a reminder that the session's been recorded, and if you've got any questions at all, we've got 6 speakers today, so we're going to split it into sort of 2 mini sections. The first 3 speakers, and then we'll have a break for some questions on those first 3 presentations, and then the next 3 speakers, and then we'll have more questions on the final 3, and then we'll have more of a general conversation if time allows. Any questions as you go along, just pop them in the chat, and we'll get to them at either someone might respond to them in the chat, or we'll let you unmute and ask the question in person. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Keith Owen is, I'll let him introduce his particular job title, because it has changed over the years that I've known him, but he's been a very key partner for the CESI researchers and academics. His support and collaboration from his role in Northern Gas Networks has been crucial to a lot of the exciting leading edge research that's come out of CESI. So I'm really delighted to hear what he has to say, and remind him he's got 10 minutes to speak.
I was waiting for that, Laura. Thank you so much. Afternoon, everybody. Great to be here. Great to be celebrating CESI. It's been quite a few years, really. I've got a few slides. I think it's about 6. I will sprint through them. So any questions towards the end, maybe. So let me just get this sharing, get everything up and running. So now, to just make sure, can anybody see that? I just want to make sure it's come through. Yeah, brilliant. So in putting these together, I guess I started reflecting on, you know, where did all of this, if I can get my slides to move forward, there we are. Oh, no, hang on, start again. Oh dear. Right, there we go. Technology is great, isn't it? I had my laptop crash on me this morning, so that wasn't a panic. So yeah, just reflecting on where things came from. So my role in the business is head of systems development. I'm also currently head of innovation for the moment, at least. And back in 2015, worked with Northern Gas Networks. I'll not read that slide out. You can see who we are, moving gas around the north of England. I was working closely with the team at CESI and having some really interesting conversations with Sarah and Laura and Phil Taylor at the time to really understand what whole systems meant. This was 2015. And that ended up, I remember it well, around November 2015, Phil and I had a Friday session in a room at our Sunderland office, mapping out, this is what the electricity system looks like, and then I mapped out what gas infrastructure looks like, what it does, and that was a really interesting morning. And over the weekend, I thought, you know, the one thing I keep hearing time and time again is there's not anywhere where we can really you know, really test whole systems thinking, really put some of this stuff to under scrutiny in a physical sense. And so Integral was born, I suppose. So I sketched a few ideas out of the weekend, took that to my senior team, said, I've had this crazy idea, have I lost my mind? And bizarrely, they thought it was a good idea. Subsequent to try and build up the capability and so forth, I've had my moments where I thought, what was I thinking? But there we go. That's all the fun of the thing. So that's a little bit about NGN. So where we got to, well, what we're trying to do through Integral with the team is create something that's really nationally, internationally significant. No point in having a parochial place. It's got to be able to punch above its weight and really make a difference. And that's making a difference from an academic perspective, from an industrial SME perspective, stakeholders, but importantly for customers as well. So it's a real broad church of ideas, an opportunity, tackling skills and jobs and research and innovation right across the piece. That's really what we're trying to get out of this. So that makes it a really interesting but really difficult challenge to deliver. So where we got to. This is a snapshot of the sort of capability we've got on site in no particular order. We've got our main sort of conferencing area, engagement hub type building, which the university team nicknamed Integral Observatory. Always makes me chuckle, that one. But it's a really important area where we can showcase and work with partners, with stakeholders, and have conversations around the future of decarbonisation. And the green stuff is in place. It's done. We've got that in the bag. So we've got IT comms capability with our colleagues at 3, and we've got the high deploy project on site using hydrogen to decarbonise the gas grid. So lots already going on. In play this year, currently being constructed or just about to. There's the Northern Power Grid's battery storage facility. That looks like that's imminent to our arrival on site. We've got our development of the solar capability, so putting a decent amount of solar on site, about 350-ish kilowatts, something like that. And importantly, we're developing the customer energy village, which is a range of homes represented across the UK, and I'll talk about that a little later. But we're not finished there, so we're still targeting things like hydrogen refueling and storage, hydrogen production, and of course there's a whole sort of story around electricity and so forth to further expand upon. So we're really keen to just keep doing more and more and more and more, because the more capability we have, the more we can leverage. There's a little animation there showing what we're really focusing on. So a little bit about these projects. High deploy, that's coming to the back end of that project. Multi-million-pound piece of work, blending 20% hydrogen into the gas grid to real gas customers in the village of Winlayton, which is just north of the site. Lots of really, really good technical, innovative work done there, not least of which was the design, development and deployment of a brand new gas blending unit with high levels of control and safety and so forth to deliver this blending opportunity. Launched with grand affair with the Energy Minister of the day. And I think the big win for me I always say this, if you've heard me before, is the amount of customer engagement we had with this, the willingness to make a difference, to want to take part, the appetite to try and help on that pathway to decarbonise has been amazing, absolutely amazing. So, well played the Northeast consumer base, well played the people of Winlayton, because they've been absolutely terrific for us, and really good to see that level of support. And I suppose, I'd like to think that would play out right across the UK, frankly. We've got a hydrogen house on site now. By goodness me, that's a busy old place. Trying to get bookings for that now, you're looking at July. We've got engagement right the way through. It's been like that since launch back last year in July. That's demonstrating hydrogen appliances, boilers, cookers, fires. We've got Worcester, Bosch and Baxi boilers in there from the high heat program. And then 2 different types of oven, cooker, hob type units, along with 2 types of hydrogen fire. So really interesting. Good to see those sorts of technological developments, all of which were created in the UK, banging out there, showing what can be done. Really useful illustration of the art of the possible. And this is a collaborative piece, as was the last, as was High Deploy working with Cadent, but this time with support from, really strong support from BASE to make this happen. So delighted to have that on the books. And then finally, just to close out, very conscious of time, we've got the Customer Energy Village. So there's a little animation here. This is under construction right now. They're working on the first lift of all of these buildings. And the idea is to really try and create some infrastructure that reflects the UK. So we've got a 1910 terrace, that's the one that's just flying by there. There's our hydrogen home. 1910 terrace, next to that is a 1950s bungalow, a 1990s detached. We've got some 70-star flats and then some 1930s semis in the corner. And that's really important. Those years are really important that I'm referencing there because they are being built to the building standards of those days. So it's a complex project from a building construction perspective because they're, you know, for the semi, for instance, and the terrace, they're mixing lime mortar, grade 3 lime mortar for the, for instance, for the main building, and then grade 5 for the chimney stacks. Whereas in the detached, it's modern day sand cement mortar construction. And so on and so forth. The buried asset will have normal natural gas feeds, normal electricity, comms, water feeds, but we're also putting in a separate hydrogen network. So that allows us, it allows researchers, it allows organizations, so what I want to use this place to exploit to the highest level the flexibility across that infrastructure and really start to make a difference. So very excited to have that project live, looking forward to lots and lots of good research hitting that in the near future. We've just had one hopefully submitted soon through Sarah and her team. Really excited to see that one get to EPRSC and hopefully get big fat thumbs up. And that's probably enough. How am I doing for time?
Absolutely spot on. Perfect timing.
Excellent.
Thank you. I really appreciate
Sorry,
that.
guys, it was a bit of a sprint, but there we are. I'll stop sharing.
As we've mentioned, we'll have questions after we have a couple more presentations, but anyone got anything in particular for Keith, you can pop a note in the chat just to remind yourself of what you're thinking. But thank you very much for that, Keith. And now I'd like to introduce Fiona Townsend and Jessica Cook to discuss the Fair Water project. Fiona is from Northumbrian Water. I believe your colleague Diana was also supposed to be here, but it isn't at the moment. So, and I'll let you introduce yourselves. So thank you. 10 minutes starting from now.
Perfect. Can I just check? Can you hear me okay? And can you see the screen okay?
Yep. Both, we can see both. And both
Perfect,
see and hear you. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So hi, I'm Fiona Townend. I actually am a Director of Research and Development at Procter & Gamble, here based in at our Newcastle Innovation Centre. And I'm here representing the Fair Water project team today, together with one of my consortium partners, Jess Cook. So unlike Keith, we're very much at the start of our journey, so I don't have lots of flash pictures, unfortunately, to show you of the output of some of our work, because Fair Water is a new project just starting in April this year, very much led by Northumbrian Water, together with 4 major partners. The first being Newcastle University, bringing research excellence in computing, engineering and behaviour science. Procter & Gamble, so the company that I'm based in, we're a global leader in consumer-centric product innovation and also task-based customer insights. NEA, who's the national charity working directly with customers and communities to end fuel and water poverty. And then Northern Gas Networks, leading the gas sector's journey to net zero and pioneering the UK hydrogen network, as Keith was just explaining. So really, we're a very unique and diverse partnership. His mission is really to engage everyone. And when I talk about everyone, I'm really talking about all domestic households in a fair transition to net zero, pioneering a joined up approach to water and energy efficiency, together with affordability and incorporating health and well-being too. So we really recognise the challenges that people face in substantially changing their behaviours, the products that they use, and the very fabric of their homes. But we together as a partnership are really sharing a bit of clear vision of how we think that this is going to be achieved. So this project is actually sponsored by Ofwat. So it's part of the Ofwat funded Water Breakthrough Challenge project, which is part of a pioneering 200 million programme that Ofwat set up in the UK to unleash a wave of innovation in the water sector to try and tackle some of the major challenges of our time. So let me go on then. So Fairwater, why do we need a project in this space? And I think that my colleague Chris from Northumbria Water talks about this very clearly, that utility service transformation is absolutely needed as we think about projecting forward into the future. And it's really driven by a number of different factors that are going on, whether they be societal or environmental. So a whole piece around affordability and accessibility, what's the customer experience, etc. of the utility services is obviously a really critical piece for the utility sector. But then also enabling them to achieve the net zero carbon goals. And I think that people don't often think about water when they're thinking about net zero. But interestingly enough, actually, domestic hot water use is about 6% of the average city's carbon footprint. It's pretty high. It's the second hot water in the home, I think, is the second biggest contributor to domestic greenhouse gas footprint after heating the space. So it's actually a pretty significant area that needs to have some focus on. Beyond that, obviously, then pieces around water scarcity, what's the resilience of the supply, particularly as you're getting into climate change, getting into population changes, urbanization, that puts a lot of strain on the supply, and also needing to maintain quality at the tap. So huge need to be thinking differently as we go forward about the utility services. And then that in turn will require engagement and changes at the domestic household level. So we're really going to need the customer to be changing what they're doing.
And that's really part of why this consortium's come together, to be honest. It's all about that customer. So I think there's a number of projects that exist out there that talk about the energy water nexus or the energy people nexus. This is the energy water people nexus. So this is looking at those three things together to try and understand where they intersect and to ensure that we can come up with appropriate mitigations and potential solutions to some of the issues that they may face. So we wanted to look at this from a water and energy efficiency perspective, because as Fiona's already said, hot water is the key here, and quite a lot of things don't actually tie those two concepts together. And so we think it's really important that we look at this in the round and look at those that affect both utilities. What we are able to do through our engagement and through behaviour change expertise that Procter & Gamble and Newcastle University already have, and through an understanding of vulnerabilities and how different vulnerabilities intersect, is we want to try and develop what we're referring to as transition pathways. This would basically mean that for different household types, different customer groups, different motivations or different barriers, we might be able to help people work out what is the best way for them to engage with the journey to net zero and therefore the transition to decarbonisation. And we want to try and understand how that works in the context of retrofit specifically. So we'll come on to some of that as well in the next presentation, which all links in with the Customer Energy Village. But as Keith's already said, you know, they are being built to previous housing standards for this very purpose. We want to understand how we look at these technologies and solutions and retrofit them to existing housing stock. And that means that this needs to impact everybody. So it's not just talking about the people that use the most water or use the most energy, it's talking about those that might actually be self-rationing and trying to find appropriate solutions for those two to try and make a substantial difference. Next slide.
So as we think about Fairwater and the programme, we kind of start from, well, what actually is it we're needing to do? And really changing customer behaviour, we know is hard. And we've got a lot of experience of this within P&G, and we know that to make habit change stick, we really need to reach consumers at an emotional level as they go about their daily tasks, not thinking about their totality of water use, not thinking about their totality of the home, but really on a task by task basis, and look at how we can give them solutions that mean that they don't feel that they're having to do a dramatic compromise. So they're not choosing between how much water they use and how clean their clothes are, or what it would cost them. So within the Fair Water programme, we're really going to look at how to help customers best transition to those sustainable behaviours through very specific tasks that are water and energy intensive. So thinking about laundry, thinking about showering, thinking about dishwashing, and at the point of time where consumers are consciously making decisions. So as we think about the programme, then we're really going to kind of got three big focuses. The first one is really around looking at consumer insights and behaviour change approaches to what we need to do to that. Couple that together with the technology and product solutions, which will enable people to make some of those changes. And then the third leg of the stool is really around data, and really leveraging data from sensors and smart meters to enable quick iterative cycles on learning with the consumers, and also in it, how do we use data to help drive visibility on customers' water use to bring that to life for them. So really kind of those three key components, and then with that work, if you like, is really going to be enabled by an ecosystem driven by having a big cohort of customers that we can be testing and learning amongst, the digital ecosystem which Newcastle is helping to construct for us, and then leveraging the customer energy village properties that Keith was referring to. Really then with the look into the output that we're going to get out of the project is really around those defined customer transition pathways, and then use that to then enable and to influence future policy development.
Just if you need just a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, no worries. This is actually our last slide, so that works out quite well. And this is just really for wanting to just explain how we are using that customer energy village for this. So, you know, we're talking about here that there's a mass amount of existing housing stock, 29 million households in the UK, and I think the estimate is that only 15% of those have been built since 1990. So therefore, we have quite a substantial challenge on our hands. The customer energy village being the base that we can start this work in. We will put those technologies and different solutions and test them in the different properties. One of the things that we're able to do with that is that there's some duplicates of the properties, so we're able to use some as baselines, but we're also able to take time-lapse videos and actually record that installation to show people what that disruption might be like. And what we want to try and understand is we want to see how the adoption decision potentially can change over time. So are people engaged with the idea of a technology, just hearing about it? How do they engage once we start talking to them a bit about, well, this is what it looks like, this is what it can do, and we can actually take them on site and show them. And what we then want to do from that is to find matched properties that have similar qualities, built at a similar time, that exist in the Northeast already, and engage with those customers to try and test those products in their homes as well, to see if they have a real life impact in the same way that we have tested at the Customer Energy Village. And doing that alongside some digital twin activity that will be led by Newcastle University, we'll be able to hopefully model those transition pathways that we talk about. That's pretty much it, I think, because we are at time. But obviously we'll come to questions at the end, but thank you very much for listening about Fairwater.
Thank you both so very much for that, and thank you again for being timely. As you mentioned, we'll get questions in a minute, but I'd like to now introduce Jessica again. And Jessica, don't forget to introduce yourself.
I didn't do that, yeah.
And Savas are going to give us a talk about the Ofgem SIF project outcome.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, straight into me. I'm sorry that you have to listen to me twice. But as I say, NEA are also part of this second consortium, smaller consortium of linked projects to the Customer Energy Village. So I didn't introduce myself. I'm the Project Development Manager for Water Poverty, specifically at NEA, and I lead the programme of work that looks at the links that exist between people living in water poverty and in fuel poverty. of which, because we've just talked about the link between hot water and energy, there are many, as I'm sure many people know. I'll let my colleague Savas introduce himself when he comes up to his slides. Don't forget, like I did, Savas. But if we move to the next slide, we want to talk to you about smarter homes for a smarter future. This did have a much longer name that none of us could actually remember, something around critical factors, but we've changed that for quite obvious reasons. This is a strategic innovation fund project. We have just completed our discovery phase project, and that is what we want to talk to you about today, the outcomes that are related. And then we will briefly touch upon the next stage of this project, which will be an alpha submission as part of the strategic innovation fund process with Ofgem and UKRI. And Smart Homes for a Smarter Energy Future is very much about us trying to understand that adoption process. So I referenced that in the previous presentation, but the adoption process is something that we wanted to look at to try and understand the key factors that can influence adoption, and whether that be positive or negative. And that's adoption specifically for this project of smart home technologies. So I already mentioned that there's a huge challenge in regards to decarbonisation of domestic homes. 20,000 domestic homes need to be decarbonised each week for the next 25 years if we're going to reach our target for net zero. And there's a lot that goes into that. Small behavioural changes are absolutely a part of that, but we think that there's some substantial benefits that customers can get from having greater energy efficiency in their homes, and some of those we feel aren't accessible to certain customer groups within society. So Savas, we can go to the next slide. So one of the things that we were really keen about was looking at this not just from the perspective of vulnerable people, but recognising that anyone can become vulnerable at any time. And I think the current cost of living crisis really shows that, as has the pandemic that we have obviously experienced for the last couple of years. So it's really important that we consider this in a round, and that we understand the impact that certain vulnerabilities can have in certain situations, also how different motivations and different systems and structures in which people live and work can influence their ability to engage with decarbonisation, and also specifically on a more narrow level, smart energy and smart home systems. So we wanted to look at this across a range of vulnerabilities, looking at those that may have difficulties with digital access or with language barriers, other communication needs and long-term illnesses. But the key thing here is that we make it a just, fair transition, something that's accessible and affordable for all, and that we understand how the factors, which I'll allow Savas to come on to now, that we've identified during this project, how those are either enablers or barriers to those different consumer groups. And one of the things that's really clear as we were progressing through this is that this work can actually impact the project we've just talked about, which is Fairwater, and a very similar energy efficiency focused project, which is NIA funded at the Customer Energy Village. Savas, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Jess. My name is Savas Pagianidis, and I'm Professor of Innovation Enterprise at Newcastle University Business School. I'm also very interested in the smart side of things, which explains my interest in this and involvement in this project. So with the NEA team, our team looked at the academic, but also the industry and policy literature from two different perspectives. Each team effectively took about 75 or so resources, academic papers and reports, practice reports, trying to synthesize the findings from projects related to smart home adoption and the associated challenges and opportunities among them. So just to give you a little bit of a flavor of the methodology, we started by defining what the criteria for the inclusion and exclusion of the articles were, and how we'll go about this, what the research questions will be, and so on. And each of the teams looked at their body of literature before we came together to start comparing notes and looking at the list of identifying factors, and more importantly, the relevant importance of those factors among the list that we've came up with. Once we were at that stage, we synthesized the factors into a first take framework. Try to make sense of all the different bits and bobs that we had identified, and then continue that process until we came up with a more coherent, hopefully more succinct type of framework that we hope to operationalize at the sort of follow-up research phase. So the main key areas of the adoption that these factors consider were 5+1 smart home systems. Of course, we're talking about the system being at the epicenter of this research of work. And initially there was a home element to that, but actually that was then sort of consolidated with a smart home system overall. Of course, the cost and benefits, the cost of installation, maintenance, and long-term support of the system, but also the potential benefits, not just financial benefits, but also say health benefits or comfort benefits. Which of course are very important for certain user groups, environmental concerns, beliefs, knowledge, and how this type of factors can potentially affect the adoption. User-related factors, some of them were, as just said, about the underlying demographics and the circumstances of the users. And finally, the support networks and communities, everything basically peripheral to the user and the household that can potentially hinder or encourage the adoption. And all these factors were underpinned by policy, industry, and regulation, the sort of wider framework within which users have to operate. So we took this 5+1 big areas, and under them we've positioned all the different factors. You'll be pleased to know that I'm not going to go through each one of them in the next 60 seconds I've got left. All of them are actually detailed in the report. We'll give you the link to, if anyone is interested in, they can download the report and read all about them. But equally importantly to the framework itself, we took the framework and we came up with a series of questions across the 5 adoption stages: awareness, persuasion, decision, implementation, and continuation, from the user perspective, asking important questions that could guide stakeholders relevant to the adoption process in terms of understanding where the big barriers are and how they can potentially overcome. So if you are a vendor or a manufacturer, if you are a housing association or a landlord, you can start asking those questions to try to understand what are the potential implications for smart home adoption and the usage of the systems.
Thanks, Savas. As Savas says, we will share that report if anybody would like to read that. These are just an extract of some of the recommendations that are within that report. It isn't an extensive list, and I'm not going to read them out. But the recommendations centre around communication and being able to provide certain levels of information, having certain safeguards and controls in place for individual needs. We focus quite a lot on the concept of meaningful engagement and being able to use the principles of co-design in order to be able to develop new products and potentially make changes to existing ones to help people. And that isn't just technology-based products, that could also be services as well. We talk about things around digital exclusion and ensuring again that we make things as accessible as possible. And really important that people are upfront and honest about the benefits that may be available, but also the risks, and making sure that those are communicated appropriately throughout the adoption journey, particularly to try and avoid mis-selling in what is going to be or is already quite a growing market. So this is a very quick overview of the discovery project. What I'd like to do now is just tell you a little bit about what we're hoping to achieve in the next phase. So Savas, if you could go to the next slide, please. This is a very brief overview, but we are at the stage now where we're about to submit at the next stage submission, which is an alpha submission for the Strategic Innovation Fund. One of the things that we would like to do is we'd like to work with users and with stakeholders to test our framework and understand if any of the literature that we've reviewed may have been missing anything that is critical as a factor. But more than that, to understand if we've thought about this in the right way, and have we considered different angles of those different factors and sub-factors that Savas flashed up on our framework. From that, we want to develop that tool that we've just shown you with the questions to try and make that into something that's more usable for stakeholders. We believe that there's value in making this into a decision support tool, something which will help them understand the insight that we've gathered from projects that have previously taken place without having to reinvent the wheel, without having to duplicate work, and actually put those insights into their product development or their customer engagement, whatever that project for them might look like. And we would like to do that through the principle of co-design in order to be able to ensure that it's something that's fit for purpose for stakeholders. Following this, we'd like to pick up on the fact that we actually sorry, we actually may come up with some potential solutions as well. They can be that we don't know what they'll be. They may just come up as part of the process. And if that's the case, we'd like to proceed with these to a concept design stage to try and see if there's anything that we can look to develop in the future, primarily to move into a beta phased project for this as well. So there's a lot of information there, but if anybody is interested in finding out more or would like to potentially work with us on the alpha phase project as a stakeholder for part of our testing, we would be very interested in discussing that with you, and we're happy to take any questions. I think now all three of us have finished.
And just to say that if anyone is interested in the report, it is available on the website as listed on this slide.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, Savas and Jessica. Sounds like you've had a busy time of it. It's a very short turnaround, but I'm glad to see you've got some positive results in such a short space of time. So I'm going to stop to give everyone a chance to think about the three presentations we've seen already, and think if you've got any questions for any of the speakers. And the question might cut across a few different, might want to pose the question to everyone, but either post in the chat or put your hand up, and I'll try and field any questions that are coming our way.
So we've stunned everyone into silence.
Well, yeah. That's, if anyone that knows me knows that's a hard thing to do for me. So I've got a question. Keith, integral, is it what you thought it would be? And do you feel that you've missed any tricks, or someone stole your thunder? Someone in my mind I think stole some of your thunder. And what do you think? Do you think you've learned from doing some national, because we tried to pitch it as a national infrastructure opportunity, didn't we? But computer said no. The funder said no, but gave the funding elsewhere. So I'm wondering what your reflections are on the role these kind of, to get access to those kind of funds that you need for these large infrastructure projects are. And just to see you're on mute, if you chat.
There we go. Keyboard was off, screen was on. What can I say? Yeah, it's an interesting one. In truth, there's been quite the first few years of developing Integral. Great to have the dog to start barking. We're really there were a mixture of lots of excitement, some really good work, collaboration, but in equal measure, pretty sizable amounts of disappointment with funding bids rejected, seeing money go further south, which is hard to swallow when you think you've got a really good bid, a good project. And I guess in hindsight, what's allowed us to do is really cut our teeth and hopefully get a little bit more assured, practiced at writing a funding bid, getting it perhaps into the right funding mechanism, in the right language. So there's been a lot of work in that space, I think. I'll not comment on folks stealing our thunder, because there's been definitely elements of that across the UK. Hey, if they want to copy what we're doing, that's brilliant. We need more research facilities anyway, don't we? So it's no bad thing, in truth. I guess for me, the thing that's really challenging, and it's less to do with the site itself, and it's certainly not to do with our industry, electricity or gas generally, but it's more about being in the UK. It's very noticeable that I went across to Brussels in 2017. I gave a presentation to one of the technical committees over there, talking about how we will decarbonize gas using 100% hydrogen, and there were Europeans in that room laughing, out loud laughing at what was being said. They thought we were utterly insane. So that was what, 4 or 5 years ago. And we were a street mile ahead in terms of research and innovation, all the rest of it, delivering that. I reflect on that now, and not only are the European countries catching up, I think they're ahead of us now. And they're ahead of us for one simple reason, that they're leveraging hundreds of billions of euros into hydrogen research, and we're not seeing that on this side of the water yet. So I think we're on a sticky wicket, really, because what that will mean is the usual suspects will develop the technologies, they'll get there first, and we lose that first adopter position, which was really the whole point of developing Integral in the first place, to position the UK for electricity and gas and transport. You know, get everything that we're doing in a really good place for decarbonisation. So yeah, we keep pressing ahead, we do what we can, but when you're up against that kind of firepower, it makes you wonder what the future will bring. We need more CESI, right? You know, just need more.
Yeah, thank you very much, Keith. That was a
Get off my soapbox.
It was a great answer, actually, because it's not I think you could talk about any sector that's doing innovation and seeing how we do great stuff conceptually at the early TRLs, and then somewhere we drop the ball when it comes to commercialisation, and that's kind of what happened here, wasn't it?
Very much, yeah.
Okay, so anyone else? Enough of me chatting. Is there any questions from anyone else or any of the speakers so far? Okay, then I want I can maybe ask Savas and Jessica what their impression of the Ofgem SIFT process was like. So for anyone that doesn't know, historically the Ofgem has funded the networks to do innovation directly. So the network companies like Northern Gas Networks and Northern Power Grid. But recently they decided to devolve a lot of that funding to the UKRI. So UKRI is the UK's research and innovation body, where all the funding councils and all the catapults sit within. So it's a bit of a change of scope, and I think the way Keith explained to me is be bold, go big, go be bold. So these were big funds to really try and do things differently, and the first round of that was done. Was it last September? I think you to submit.
Yeah, November was the final. November the 3rd was the closeout, Laura. Yeah.
Okay. So I've just asked Jessica and Savas what their thoughts on that new process was, and I don't know if you've been involved in NIAs or NICs, which was the old way. Do you see any differences in the way it's done, or benefits, pros and cons?
I'm trying to be really diplomatic about the way that I answer this question.
Please don't, you're amongst friends.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah.
We might pause the recording.
I think it's fair to say that all of us involved have probably found this to be one of the most restrictive processes we've ever been involved in, particularly for that. And I do worry that maybe it slightly hinders good innovation in the way that it's been structured, particularly with timelines. That being said, there's a thing about pushing people under a hard deadline, and it does sometimes make things move a little faster paced, and whether that's always a good thing or not is to be seen. But we have been able to deliver, albeit on a very tight timescale with discovery, and I won't say we have delivered an alpha submission in an equally tight time frame, but we are almost there. Savas is laughing. Would you like to add anything, Savas?
Yes, I only have one word to add to this and describe the whole process, which is painful. And I think that summarizes the experience. We had basically 10 days between the discovery project finishing and the alpha submission to prepare everything, absorb all that we went through in discovery, reflect on it, and then try to capture something that follows and builds on it. into an alpha submission. So it will have been really nice to have at least a couple of more weeks. It will have been almost a luxury under the current circumstances, to be honest. But as I said, maybe that's a good thing. It kind of forces you to focus on things that matter and just get on with things.
Thanks for that. That's really interesting, because the reason I mention it is because the second round has just been launched. So, and there's quite a few interesting challenges that they've set out. One of them being just transition, which I thought was interesting. Can't remember the other three off the top of my head. But yeah, so that was good, because they're generally asking, what do we want to be funded? So there's lots of positives, I think, but I agree that the timeframes were tight, and I think because it was the first one, nobody quite knew how it's supposed to work, and how they sold it on the billboard was, you don't do anything before you win the alpha. Just tell us what the idea is. No, before you win the discovery, don't tell us what the idea is. Just don't need to do anything. And then all of a sudden there was a million hoops to jump through before you could even submit your discovery. It was like, I thought discovery was this part of it. It was really a bit missold, shall we say. That was my opinion. But not to be put off. I always like these kind of innovation projects, so I'm sure I'm looking at Sarah with Sarah Sheehy, whether she'll let me put the team through the pain again. But anyway, yes. And with that, I might move on unless there's any other questions. I still don't see anything in the chat. Okay, so the next presenter, I'm delighted to present Sarah Sheehy. I first met Sarah when I was at Newcastle University, and she worked with me on CESI. So, and then she left me and went to TNEI. So I missed her so much that I followed her to TNEI. So Sarah's going to talk to us today about some of the research. Well, I'll let her tell you what she's going to tell you about. And hopefully she's got a bit of an intro to TNEI, because I haven't really told you what we do. And over to you, Sarah. Thank you. You've got 10 minutes, and you know I'll hold you to it.
Yes, I do know that. Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Sheehy. I'm a technical consultant in the Networks and Innovation team at TNEI. TNEI are a specialist energy consultancy. We work across the energy sector. Historically, this has been focused on the electricity system, but we are broadening our sites these days to consider the whole energy system, with the legacy of CESI and implementing that quite heavily. My presentation is a little bit different this afternoon. So I was an RA at CESI working on, amongst other things, the North of Time project that I'll talk a bit about today. And then I'd like to go on to cover some of the aspects of that work that's influenced some of the innovation projects that I'm working on just now, or the ways in which I've approached tackling some of the innovation projects I'm working on at TNEI. So the North of Tyne research project at CESI was a sort of short, sharp dive into the region as a case study for energy systems integration. So it was a collaborative project with stakeholders from industry, local government, and our university partners working on a number of things for the energy systems in the region. It was looking at an energy audit, some understanding the data that we had for the energy system, what its potential was for integration, and what modelling and reporting could be done as well with that work. We were looking to capture and model not just the networks, but also the interactions between the different stakeholders. For example, the local authority having climate ambitions, or local needs depending on the demographic of the customers in the network. And we also wanted to understand the impact of policy changes at the regional level that were coming down from either national level government or from local government themselves. So with this work, we slide. So it was centered around the Integral site that Keith has described already, that being the point of conjunction between the gas and the electricity networks in the region. And we were looking to really understand how that coupling of the networks would work at a regional level, which was a new scale for work at CESI at the time. I think some work had been done on top-down modelling and others on bottom-up modelling, and we were trying to do something in the middle of that. And as you can see on the right hand side here, that's a graph that sort of maps out the different electricity and gas connections in the region that we were looking at. And so our research findings were that actually this was really hard. It was a really difficult challenge. You know, with challenges like this come a lot of opportunities, but for the short amount of time that we had on this project, we really understood the scale of the problem in dealing with challenges like this. And as we started to look at data and gathering information from the different stakeholders, communication and visualization of that was really key to the work that we were doing. So as much as some of our data gathering was fairly limited, but we were able to still understand some of the data flows across the region, energy consumption and things like that, and then how do we communicate that to the interested parties if we're dealing with you know, a range of people from university and industry experts to consumers to policy. Communication and visualization was key. And yeah, so it was a lot of sort of learning to take from the work that we did in the north of Tyne. So as well as the experience of working in whole energy systems and energy systems integration, there are a lot of practical considerations for the work that we were doing that sort of influenced the way we approached innovation projects since joining TNEI. So in TNEI, I'm part of the smaller data science group within the networks and innovation team. So we work a lot with innovation projects with network companies and developers. And data science itself is normally associated with big data, but we are often dealing with problems that have very little data. And so we need approaches for sort of dealing with both of those type of problem. And working with CESI was really valuable for me in terms of, you know, from my experience in growing my knowledge in energy systems integration, but also in the practical way in which we approach problems, in industry and for a number of different stakeholders. So I would say that, one of the things that I learned obviously was the value of whole energy systems and the energy systems integration approach with net zero and being a whole sector and system problem. But that we also learned that problems in innovation, you know, at this scale and at this pace are going to be messy and they're going to be challenging. But with that comes opportunities for innovation and that presents a lot of interesting work for us to be doing. Also thinking about the value of data and how we communicate that data is really important. And also finally, and the one thing that I will talk about in a few examples of interesting projects I'll show now is that innovation is needed at all levels across the system and at all scales. So projects that look at top down or bottom up projects or anywhere in between are needed to get us to net zero. So just that takes me on to the summary I'd like to give of a few of the innovation projects I've been working on at TNEI. These range from the very local level to the national scale. So an example of a very local level project that we're working on just now is an idea called community DSO. So as the energy system transitions towards net zero, we're moving from network operation to system operation for different parts of the network. And our community DSO project is really thinking about how can we do that at a very local level for communities built around people can, you know, homes or buildings connected to the same network assets that may have different network cable, may have different assets such as, you know, domestic PV or electric vehicles working together at that scale to deliver flexibility or to, you know, to balance energy supply and demand. What's the role for the consumer? What's the value for the consumer? And can operating at that kind of level with these priorities make a difference for everyone? So that's a very local level example of innovation projects. The next one is more regional. So another project I've been working on is transition. This is in collaboration with SSE, network operator. They're looking across their region at flexibility services. So if you're thinking about flexibility in terms for electricity to system flexibility, this would be somebody responding to a call to change their behaviour. So think about it, a common one is demand response. So often, you know, demand might be asked to sort of turn down their consumption if it was a peak time in order to reduce peak consumption at a certain amount of time. But if we are doing that as a service, and it's something that people can participate in, how do we know how much flexibility has been delivered? We need to understand what that asset, what that person, what that consumer would have done if they hadn't have provided the flexibility, for us as a service. So this is what our work in this project has been looking at. How do we estimate what a consumer would have been doing if we didn't ask them to reduce their demand behaviour? And the last project I'll talk about was a net zero operability challenge that we worked on last year with Energy Systems Catapult. So this allowed us to think about what happens when we get to net zero. What does the system look like? There's a lot of change coming. There's the pace and the scale of the change that we'll see over the coming decades to reach net zero is huge. What happens when we get there? What might the system look like? What things might be different? And so, particularly looking at the 5 Ds for the path to net zero, with energy systems integration, the level of dependency is going to increase significantly between the energy vectors. But one example of the work that we looked at here, one of the conclusions that we had was actually starting to think about energy and electricity supply and demand a little bit differently. So we'd normally think about the energy system, the electricity system, as balancing supply to meet demand. So we would have our centralized generation, and that would be working to meet demand across the country. But as we start to get more renewable generation on the system, what if we start to think about matching demand to meet supply? So if the wind is blowing or if the sun is shining, can we move our demand around at a more national level to meet the generation that is readily available with renewables? So as you can see, there's a lot of interesting work I've been doing at TNEI, and a lot of this builds on the work that I did at CESI. And so thank you for inviting me to speak today. Thank you very much, Sarah, and on time, as always. Thank you very much for that. We won't take questions for Sarah just now, but if anyone's got any thoughts, pop them in the chat, and we'll come to them on at the end. But next up to speak, I've got Dan Perry from GHD, and I think some of his colleagues are with him. But Dan can maybe let us know who's going to be speaking. If Sarah can stop sharing her slides, please. Thanks. And Dan, when you're ready, you get the feel that you've got 10 minutes.
Sure.
just to arrange. Thank you.
Great afternoon, everybody. I'm Dan Perry. I'm a senior engineer working for GHD. I'm presenting one of GHD's energy systems integration projects, HEOS. HEOS stands for Hydrogen Energy Operation and Storage. GHD is undertaking our HEOS projects for BEIS, Government Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, as part of its longer duration energy storage programme. So GHD...
Dan, your slides haven't came through. It just says Dan Perry has started screen sharing. Do you want to try again?
Yes, I would.
Thank you.
Let's have another go at that. Is that better? Is that any good?
That's it now. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, thanks very much. Thanks for the prompt there. So GHD, we're a member of the CESI Industrial Advisory Board. We're sponsoring some of the stuff this week, and we're going to be at the in-person event tomorrow with a stand. So we're keen to talk more with other people in this forum and the researchers, and we're really interested in how we can take forward ideas, and particularly sort of bridging the gap between academia and real world projects. I would just like to take a brief moment to talk about GHD. Some of you may be wondering who we are, possibly even wondering if we're hair straightener manufacturers, which we're not. We're a leading engineering consultancy, kind of medium-sized, 10,000 employees worldwide. We've been around quite a long time. We're employee-owned, gives us a bit of a longer-term view. So certainly keen to be at the forefront of innovation, particularly around net zero and energy transition. Closer to home, our energy systems business group is headquartered in Newcastle. We've got about 60 staff, and typically every September we take about 5 Newcastle University graduates to work for us. Yeah, so future energy, we refer to, it's a mainstay of our business. You can see some of the topics that we mean by future energy. And for us, future energy really cuts across all our markets and service areas, everything we do. And we definitely include energy systems integration as part of that. So yeah, if you'd like to talk to us about our projects, there's an opportunity to do that tomorrow, or do contact us through this forum or through CESI. So just the two areas I'll discuss, I'll just mention a little bit about the programme and then about our project. I promise I won't take longer than 10 minutes. So I don't know if any of you are aware of the Long Duration Energy Storage Programme. It aims to accelerate commercialisation for long duration technologies. It excludes commercial solutions like pumped hydro and lithium ion. There's kind of two areas to it, either first of a kind prototypes or actual full system demonstration. It's part of the 10-point plan. It was interesting to hear previous comments around funding. So the programme basically supports the demonstration of innovative longer duration energy storage technologies, which provide grid flexibility through longer duration storage and the provision of novel services and system benefits. And just picking up on where we are, because there's some different parts of the project. We're in stream 2, so we're a first of a kind prototype. We're at technology readiness level 4 or 5. And within each of the two streams, stream 1 and stream 2, there's 3 areas: grid to grid, grid to thermal, and power to X. And being a hydrogen project, we sit in that power to X. So at the moment, we're in the final stages of phase 1, which is a fully funded feasibility study. And we hope to be the winning bid from 4 competing projects to get taken forward into phase 2, which is the build out phase for the technology demonstration. And there's up to £9.45 million worth of funding for that. So we'll talk a little bit more about the project itself. Relatively straightforward. We're showing a process flow diagram here, outlining a fluid system, a process, and it's pretty straightforward. It's a simple batch process to make hydrogen and store it. It's got 2 modes, either charging or discharging. So if we look at charging, I think we all know what we're talking about with hydrogen and electrolysis. We take a water supply, clean it up with a water treatment package, forward it to a grid-powered electrolysis unit, turning the water into hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen is vented or possibly used by our off-taker, and the hydrogen is compressed and stored in our HEOS storage units, which is basically a metal hydride based storage unit. So it's a powder that sits in a pressure vessel, and the hydrogen gas absorbs to that powder, and basically means you can store more and store at lower pressures. In terms of discharging, it's pretty straightforward. You just literally open the valves and pressurized hydrogen flows to an off-taker, either by pipe supply or you could off-take to a transport vehicle. In our case, we're off-taking to a glass-making pilot plant, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a slide's time. So yeah, it's a project to demonstrate hydrogen, say, in times of excess variable renewable energy. It's modular and scalable, provides benefits across multiple elements of an integrated energy system. It'll demonstrate that low or zero carbon hydrogen can be provided to a wide range of applications, and it's demonstrating Lavo's patented metal hydride storage as cost-effective, safe, and sort of low-pressure store of hydrogen. So I just mentioned some of the stakeholders for our project. So we're closely linked with the University of Chester and Professor Joe Howe, who's basically helped us find Glass Futures, who are the organisation that will take and use our hydrogen. I've just mentioned Lavo, and they're a firm based in Australia, and they've got a world-leading metal hydride technology, which we'll be using with this project. And GHD has strong links with Lavo historically. But otherwise, we have full responsibility for the project in terms of development, project management, build out, and test. So yeah, in terms of opportunities for the project, it's clearly about technology demonstration, which is a bit different for GHD. as it means we're not particularly tied on cost, as our costs are claimable. I would like to say that our test phase of the project, if we're successful, is not tied down. So we're interested if anyone has any ideas on how to test, what sort of tests we could run on this plant. I guess to think about grid flexibility and system integration. Clearly, a lot of interest internationally. We know what the prices are doing on natural gas and other energy sources, and lots of interest from the public and investors on hydrogen and other sustainable projects. In terms of challenges, it's demonstration scale. So actually, we didn't really know how big to build the project. Do you ask how much people want, or do you tell them, or do you say this is what we're able to provide, and then say who wants it, sort of thing. But we're making free hydrogen, so we're paired up with our off-taker. Yeah, I think the other thing I'll just pick up on is just saying that the electrolyzer selection we found interesting. We expected to need to use a PEM electrolyzer, the kind of racehorse electrolyzer, because it's more flexible. But actually, we found a better, lower cost solution with an alkaline electrolyzer. Last slide. So I'll just talk a little bit more about Glass Futures here if I've got time. They're a key partner for the project as the hydrogen off-taker. Glass Futures are a research and training organisation. They're not for profit, trade body organisation for the glass industry. We know glass is already highly recyclable, as we know from home recycling, but it is energy intensive. So Glass Futures' aim is to decarbonise glass making and to ensure it's high value, fully sustainable, zero carbon products that underpins the industry. You know, not only as for containers, glass jars and bottles, but also as a building material. So Glass Futures are constructing a smaller scale pilot plant in St Helens, and they'll be using hydrogen at that pilot plant, and a lot of that hydrogen will come from us for that plant, and also for test facilities for testing equipment, furnaces for ceramics, textiles and glass industry. And I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Dan. Some really interesting and world leading stuff going on there. It's certainly leading for the UK, so very interesting. I've scribbled down some questions for later, so get yourself ready. So our final speaker today is, if you stop sharing your slides, Dan, and see if I can make sure David's there. I can see him. So I'd like to introduce David Lynch from the North East LEP, and again he will tell you his job title because it's a nice one, and yeah, I'll leave it there because David's got a great.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura. Yeah. So afternoon, everyone. I'm David Lynch. I'm Energy Innovation Partnership Manager at North East LEP. I'm just going to try and share my slides. It didn't do what I was expecting it to do.
It definitely flashed up, but then it went.
The slides did they? Okay.
Yeah, but then left again.
Okay, let me just share this now. Can you see my slides?
Yeah, I see the editing mode. Yeah, presenting mode. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so you've got 10 minutes, so I'll start you from.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you. So yeah, thanks for the invite today. Really great to be here at the session and really enjoying the presentation so far. So thank you, everyone. So I'm David Lynch. I'm Energy Innovation Partnership Manager. I started the LEP back in 2019, and I was brought in to lead on the North East Energy Catalyst. It's basically an innovation and demonstration partnership. It unites our public sector organisations, universities, institutions and government bodies. And what we're all trying to do, we're looking to really showcase what the North East has to offer as a region, really try and talk that up a bit more than what we're in perhaps how we were previously doing it, develop a perspectives for the region to help attract ultimately investment into the region, more jobs, growth and GVA. So we're looking to tackle major challenges and deliver on national net zero energy policy, drive new economic growth opportunities, as I said, for regional SMEs, look at new innovations, help SMEs really understand what opportunities there are, particularly across heat, power and transport, our kind of core sector areas of focus, and help us really move forward at pace and at scale for the region. So in terms of activity, and bear with me for this slide, but I think it just kind of summarizes everything we've been up to. So our core sectors are across heat, power and transport. And when I came into the role, we developed a prospectus for the region to try and kind of capitalize this in a nice, neat way. And we've called that Northeast Fest, and that stands for Northeast Future Energy System Today. And the title is quite deliberate. It's to prove that we're actually delivering tomorrow's energy system, and we're doing that today. It's happening now. So there's no need to kind of wait around. It's actually happening here in the Northeast. So we're maximizing deployment and life cycle of low carbon power. When it comes to offshore, when it comes to the power, the offshore sector, it's quite well developed. The kind of supply chains is well developed, and the understanding and policy arrangements around that are very well developed. We're supporting commercializing and deploying scaled pathways to decarbonisation of heat. Within decarbonisation of heat, it's very fragmented. There's a lot within that. There's a lot of vectors at play. So that could be growth of hydrogen, deployment of heat networks, deployment of heat pumps, biogas, and other vectors that are quite central to that. So really trying to understand what those supply chain opportunities are. And then industrializing and mainstreaming the technology to decarbonize transport. So lots and lots of investment, £4.8 billion worth of investment in electrification going on in the region for electric battery manufacture and vehicle manufacture. So lots happening here in the region. So our core sectors of focus cut across heat, power, transport, systems and materials. What we're trying to do through the Catalyst is really showcase our innovation and demonstration asset base. So 3 core pillars of work that I've been involved in is really that innovation demonstration, taking a bit of a lead on that, kind of showcasing, developing the website. We've developed a video as well. I'll put the link to the video in the chat so you can look at that at your leisure. Really proud of that and really keen to really push that out there. We've developed a website and we've developed an asset map of all the innovation demonstration capabilities. So all our laboratories and our universities, if you're an SME looking at, what capabilities do we have, maybe down at Centre for Process Innovation down in Sedgefield, you can go to our website and find out more about those. So a real central point of showcasing those assets. Supply chain infrastructure, we're trying to really understand what the supply chain opportunities are. So we've been conducting some research, which I'll talk around in just a moment about what the supply chain opportunities are. And then supporting businesses to grow and really develop new projects, new innovations to support the pipeline. Part of what I did there is develop an Energy Innovation Challenge programme. So we allocated £200,000, grants of £20,000 to 10 businesses, which they then had to match fund. And it really helped them to get inside our labs, do some trial, do some testing, and develop new prototypes ready for the market. So that's kind of core activities of work. Sarah Walker is on our Catalyst board, as is Keith Owen from Northern Gas Networks, and they offer real acumen. And I have to say, delighted with the REF results today. Outside of London, we have the strongest consortium of researchers across our universities, and that is a huge achievement for the region that we're looking to really push on with. We've developed a partner network, so that's corporate partners. Again, I'll show you some of those in a moment. And what I do is I sit down with them when a partner becomes part of the network. I'll do a diagnostic with them to understand what their priorities are and look at whether there's any opportunities to link in with SMEs or indeed the board. We've developed that SME network, so lots and lots of SMEs coming to us for assistance, that signposting, and we developed various subgroups, working groups. We've got a working group on hydrogen, looking at developing a hydrogen strategy for the region. And again, really beneficial in terms of bringing people together. So the focus in terms of priorities in the short period has been really showcasing the regional energy innovation demonstration capabilities. We had a Northeast Energy Catalyst Summit back in March, and then we did a bit of a roadshow. We brought all the participants together and were able to really showcase some of the assets as the doors were starting to reopen. So people were able to go out and look at the laboratories across the region, across the universities, the Catapult and Blythe and CPI, and really understand for themselves some of the assets that we do have. So that was a really good opportunity. Building and expanding reach, as I said, the network's growing. These are kind of new board members. Sunderland University joined and CPI joined in January. And then we're expanding that to partner and SME network as well. So building the evidence base, really important that we conduct some analysis. So I there's a lot, as I said, I felt that with decarbonisation of heat, there's so much at play. So we conducted a summary analysis for each heat decarbonisation pathway to understand, well, where's the potential in terms of jobs and GVA growth for the region. We're looking at, if they're not growing, what are the barriers there? What technological, regulatory, social and economic barriers exist? And how can we crack and break down those barriers? And also from a skills perspective, we often talk about skills gaps. Actually, the skills opportunities. We need to drive more activity to get people interested in these sectors. I just think we need to speak to these to audiences in a slightly more fluid way when we come to energy. I also conducted very recently, Jess showed a very stark statistic there. We're currently decarbonising 20,000 homes per year. We need to accelerate that to 20,000 homes per week in order to hit net zero by 2050. We need a lot more bodies. We need more retirees, maybe to come out of retirement. Maybe they've taken early retirement, maybe they're policemen or firemen. We need to get into our schools and talk about, what does retrofit actually mean? It's quite confusing, the language that we're using. I think we need more storytelling. So we've been talking to our colleges, our training providers, and private sector as well, to really understand where the skills gaps are, and doing quite a lot of work on that. We're just publishing a report at the moment. Again, that report will be on the Catalyst website. I'm happy to share or answer any further questions or any detail on that study. A couple more I think it's the last slide, Laura. So in terms of priorities for me, the summit, which we delivered in March, that's really created a really good flurry of activity from SMEs, accessing assistance from myself. We've just delivered a clean time project that was, we actually gained £800,000 worth of grant funding there to develop a smart digital infrastructure across the Port of Tyne to help it understand how energy was being consumed across the port, and then enable it to make net zero decisions based on that data. So that's now delivered, which we're really, really pleased about. And we did a dissemination event in April on that. The skills gap analysis, as I said, final report and action plan is now in place for that. We're growing the Catalyst board, the partner network's expanding. We've identified a project pipeline within the region of £285 million worth of projects. So thinking about shared prosperity fund, and I've got a really good team of Catalyst connectors, including Brianna on the call today, that are now assisting me with that. So we've got the board, but we've also got Catalyst connectors at each partner that you can see in the footer, and they're helping me really realise and sharpen up this project priority pipeline. I'm also looking to launch very shortly the Energy Innovation Challenge Programme Phase 2, and talking to investors that are interested in investing in Northeast businesses. So yesterday we had Meet the Investor session at the Northeast Battery Alliance conference. That was really interesting to sit in with some of those sessions, and we're going to be working with SMEs to really handhold them through that process. So look out for that as well. So that's me, Laura. I think, did I stick to time? I hope I did.
You were so interesting, and I forgot to check the time. That was really good, David. Thank you.
My wife
so
never
much.
says that. Thank you.
I'm not saying I would listen to you all day, but 10 minutes, that was really interesting. Thank you. So does anyone, first of all, in the audience and the people, because I'm conscious that a lot of us in this meeting were actually speaking. So first of all, I'd like to open up questions to people who weren't speaking, to anyone who spoke today. If you've got any questions, first of all, on the three people who just spoke laterally there, so Sarah, Dan and David, and then after that, we've finished so much on time, and thank you so much everyone for that. That gives us maybe a chance for the people who did speak to quiz each other and maybe have a bit of a panel session, and we'll possibly finish a wee bit early. I won't hold you chatting for the next 40 minutes unless we've got lots to say. So first of all the people that spoke, if you don't mind, could you put your cameras on so we can see you, and then ask the audience if they've got any questions for any of the speakers today. Yeah, I think that's what happens when most of the speakers are also most of the audience. Okay, so if there's no questions, can I open up the questions to quiz each other? Does anyone have any questions for any of their fellow speakers today? I've got one, Laura. Really enjoyed the presentation from Jess, actually. Don't want to pick on Jess just because he used to work with her. But, just in terms of the next application, it obviously, for the CIF, the custom energy village needs to be ready on time, does it? In order to, so the custom energy village will be built hopefully by October, November. How much is that application riding on the custom energy village being ready? And is that a risk?
Actually, we've purposely designed the project so it's not. We would like to be able to use the customer energy village for alpha, and if we do, it would be the second half, because as we said, CIF is extremely restrictive with when you deliver your project, and we can deliver between the 1st of August and the 31st of January only for a 6-month project. So yes, so if it is ready on time, which up until now, bar I think one slight snag, it looks like it still will be, and I'm touching wood, then we get the back end of our CIF delivery timeframe to be able to use the customer energy village. So we would absolutely like to do that initially, just as a way of getting stakeholders involved and actually seeing the village, and potentially it might be a way of us trying to test how our framework and the decision support tool can work with some potential manufacturers and their technologies, just to see, does it make a difference with engagement? So we could use it as a test bed with users to see that if they take those factors and think about some of the questions that users might ask, for example, if they don't do that, what is the impact? And then when they've done it, how does that change, and how does users' perception change? So we will use the customer energy village for that if we can. Brilliant. And apologies, Keith, I wasn't being pessimistic. I know it will be built. We know how builders change. We know. Don't worry, it's builders. Great. Thanks, Jess. Brilliant project.
It'll all be fine, David. It'll all be fine.
And does anyone have any questions for anyone else? If not, can I be permitted to ask Dan a question? He's still here. Yeah, yes.
Chris has got his hand up, Laura. Sorry, we'll go to him first.
Yes, please.
Sorry, I started speaking. I hadn't got my mic down. It was just I was interested in David's slide on the skills assessment, and I guess I'm wondering whether is that basic skills? Is that sort of the retrofit skills that we're going to be looking for in delivering what we're trying to do in Fairwater, or is it more around the advanced technologies of the sort that Dan was talking about and that Sarah was talking about in energy systems integration, or is it just across the whole board?
It's skills required, Chris, for domestic retrofit per se. So that's your installers, your insulators, kind of whole systems integrators, people that go in and give advice as well. If there's been a change of heating technology. So it identifies the roles within PAS 2035, but actually in this study, it's told us that in addition, we need 4 more roles in addition to what's already in PAS 2035, and gives a little bit of information about the nature of those roles and the attributes that they require in order to understand where those attributes may come from and the types of industries that might lean into those attributes. So it's been a really useful study. It's been a lot of work. We're just in the middle of doing the dissemination of that piece and producing a public facing report, which I'm more than happy to share with you, Chris.
Yeah, that'll be really good. I mean, we certainly see skills deficits appearing in a number of areas, and everywhere is getting really competitive for skills. And I suppose the more technical those skills get, the more competitive they are. So I think it's an area we can all think about together, and I guess develop that pipeline almost from schools upwards, in terms of making sure we do have the people we need.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can I just comment on that? I don't know how scientific this is, but certainly I've read some reports from the sector on training that the way to engage, and this is mainly coming from how do we engage people in engineering, the main way to engage the younger generation in anything at the moment is to utilise the climate change element. The young people are, people younger than me, shall we say, are extremely focused on the impact of climate change because it will be in their lifetime. That's an approach that, all the things that we've mentioned today come under that banner of climate mitigation, climate change mitigation. Yeah. So that might be a nice narrative, and I'm sure David's weaved that narrative into his report as well.
We have, Laura. So as part of the report, what we didn't want to do is just produce a report full of lots of statistics and useful information. It actually has an action plan as part of it, which the energy and skills team within the LEP are really pushing with the strategic advisory board for the skills, the SAP panel, and it's skills advisory panel. Sorry, I was trying to remember what SAP stood for in the non-energy. It was confusing. My brain just didn't work there for a second. For the skills advisory panel. And part of that is actually how we talk to younger people about energy. Domestic retrofit doesn't mean anything to young people. Net zero really doesn't. But what does resonate with them is storytelling, and really tapping into the kind of, they are quite earthy young people in the way that they think naturally. So just tapping into that and changing the language through storytelling, that this is natural transition from Victorian times through coal mining, through development of our electricity grid in the 60s and gas grid in the 70s. This is the next transition, and this is where it's heading, so they can see the future and kind of follow that timeline. Okay, and then it lands. And we've tested that out in a couple of schools actually, albeit more affluent ones, I have to say. But we need to talk to different audiences in different ways, is my answer to that.
Thank you.
Laura, if I could just jump in, I mean, I'm sure we're not any different to any other organisations, but we have an absolutely vast gap of about sort of 2 years experience up to about 15 years of experience, where you just can't get anyone, other than offering to make them a millionaire sort of thing to tease them away. But what I will say is we do take a lot of graduates from Newcastle University, and blimey, they're really, without wishing to embarrass anyone on the call, they're extremely good. I'm very impressed with them. And it's great that we've got that pipeline forming now. And I would just develop the point as well. I completely agree how important STEM is, getting into local schools. And I'm trying to encourage more of our younger engineers to do that as part of their professional development, as well as all everything that's needed there to make young people aware of all the vast opportunities there are in energy and in related sectors.
Thank you. Can I ask Dan my question now? Okay, Dan. Just you mentioned your Power to X project with BEIS. So one of the challenges is the colour of hydrogen. So if you're using grid electricity, what colour of hydrogen are you saying you've got?
Do you know what? I had a slide on that and I removed it, and I was thinking about reflecting. Basically, the one of the sources I came across said that it was yellow hydrogen. And I was going to sort of bounce that back to the forum and see if anyone had sort of heard at the grid that hydrogen produced from grid electricity was yellow hydrogen, or what really. But I think there's a couple of sources out there that say it's yellow, but I'm open to other ideas too.
Yeah, there's some narrative that there was going to be no incentives for non-green, or they were going to, if you use grid electricity, there was a lot of people pulled out of getting interested in the sector because they wanted to use grid electricity. So hopefully that business model is still back in place, because I think it'd be daft not to use grid electricity in some locations.
I've been feeling very positive about the project, but I think it was when I was at home, have one scary thought the other day that we could end up in a situation with yellow hydrogen, say, where there's people basically using natural gas to generate electricity to make hydrogen, which would be, the complete opposite of what we're trying to do with energy system integration. I mean, I'm sure the financials don't work out for that to be possible at the moment, but hopefully we'll see.
I was similarly conflicted when, because if you think about solar panels on someone's roof, it's not a really efficient way to make hot water, and yet we tell people to use solar panels, and I'm going, well, just solar thermal is 80% efficient. Why would you use an immersion heater with solar panels? But I could never get the message across. So yeah, sometimes it's, even if it's the wrong, it's better than traditional routes is probably what I would say. And the other question I've got, Dan, is round about, you mentioned glass futures. Are they looking to use hydrogen to replace, are they using methane at the moment? So are they looking to replace it, or do they use hydrogen in how they produce the gas? I think
so it's a new plant, and they're looking to run it only from hydrogen, or they're not looking to use natural gas. I guess they will have a backup supply. Glass making, you need to the start up and shut down is weeks at a time, so you try and run the plant for sort of years at a time. So they're looking at different backup supplies, but yeah, they're looking at renewable natural gas, any ways that they can have some sort of site electricity generation, and anything they can do to get renewable sources, but primarily hydrogen. Okay,
so they're just burning the gas. They don't use it as part of the process for making the glass.
No, it's just heating. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Sounds really promising.
And of course, recovering that heat as well is really important too, as we all know.
That's a good point. Ken's got his hand up.
Can I ask Keith? You talked about 20% mixture, hydrogen mixture in the gases. In Integral, are you looking at the transition to 100% hydrogen distributed to the houses, and
that's
is that to come through?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at that. Part of, as mentioned before, part of the Customer Energy Village Bill, we're putting a separate hydrogen main in, and some of the things that we'll be looking at are how can we, looking at the transition from pure natural gas to pure hydrogen, what does that look like all the way through to the appliance? Because the logistics of delivering that with the minimum impact, minimum amount of time required to do that conversion, so the customer gets, disrupted as to the smallest amount of time possible is where we need to get to. So there's a lot of work to do in understanding what does the commercial relationship look like, so that we can guarantee every single time we knock on the door, we can convert somebody within a guaranteed period, and so on and so forth. So certainly some of the forward projects are looking at how we work with gas safe industry, how we work with our side to really make that a slick process, so that when it comes to things like the Hydrogen Village trials, which we've just been given the nod for down in Teesside, we can do that really, really effectively. And that's the key to this, really, because the one thing that is pretty clear from any one of us, really, not sort of a generic customer term, but any one of us, is the last thing we want is some pesky gas person, or indeed anyone, knocking on a door saying, oh, by the way, we're going to knock your heat off for the next day or two. What they want to hear is, we'll be in, you'll be converted in an hour, and we'll be back out again, so you won't even know we're here. That's really what they want to hear. So that's where we're trying to get to. There's a number of technologies that are enablers for that, such as hydrogen ready appliances, which are the type which you've pushed up onto the screen, like that are sitting in the hydrogen house. They can be gas boilers and then convert quite readily to hydrogen units within about 30-40 minutes. So that's where the appliance manufacturers are headed. That's the sort of conversation you hear going on between them and government representatives about mandating hydrogen ready as they did with condensing boilers back in 2007. If you do that, then you're enabling a future rollout of hydrogen more effectively, and it's a bit of it's a no risk or low risk position to be in that even if they decide not to do it, well, there's no harm done. It just means that the appliances are there, and then at some point when they're replaced, it it'll be a heat pump instead of a hydrogen boiler. So
yeah.
There's certainly within the site we're looking to do an awful lot in that space on the 100%. We've got the blended there. Now it's time to step up and do the big stuff.
And will the wider Northern Gas network, if it did become 100% hydrogen, are you in a position to sort of distribute 100% hydrogen more widely, or is this just specifically to the?
Yeah, there's the blocker right here, right now is a mix of, there are still one or two trials that we've got to undertake to validate the science that we've already done with the likes of the health and safety labs at Buxton and our colleagues at over at DMV GL in Spade Adam. So that hence things like the village trial, and we've got the unoccupied trials down at Redcar, which are live right now, and that's looking at a section of existing network that's remained undisturbed for decades, which was a former housing estate that's no longer there. So we're playing around with that network to validate the science in terms of leakage models and so forth. So we need to do all of that, but the really, really important thing is we need government to say yes, because until they change the legislation, we're going nowhere with this. And obviously, it's upon us to provide the right level of evidence and science base to give government the confidence that what we're telling them is correct. Wrapped up in there are changes to things like thermal energy regulations, which is on the statute book. So politicians decide how to change that, not the industry. Changes to gas safety management regulations. Again, some of that sits with government and not with the industry. And then on top of that, I chair the IGM Hydrogen Committee. So as part of that work, there's something like 72 standards that govern best practice, engineering practice in the UK. They've all got to be updated to have a hydrogen supplement added. We've done 6 of the most dominant standards that we've got in the UK. They're now at pre-formative stage to use with the village trials. We work really closely with the SEN committee, TC234 and BSI, to make sure that the changes to our standards in the UK are something that plays back into Europe as well. So there's a few things to plug in, but everything's pointing in the right direction. The primary challenges, I would say, because a plastic network will quite happily convey hydrogen, there's no real issues there. The principal challenges will be around storage. Our storage is based on volumetric capacity, and because your energy density is a third of what you've got with natural gas, there's a storage issue there to resolve. I can't get too excited by it because we know how to do big storage. We used to operate salt caverns down at Teesside with 1.5 million cubic meters of gas available every day, so we're pretty good at that sort of thing. So I'm not too troubled by that. There's one or two tickly things around velocity, really around the control mechanisms rather than anything else. There's some work going on looking at dust pickup with the increased velocities. So really we're kind of, we're at the edges of where challenges might be now rather than in the thick of it these days. So yeah, so good progress made.
Is the increased velocity because to get the same energy through, you have to pump
that's right,
at a faster speed, and it damages the pipe. Damages the pipe.
Right. The velocity of the gas itself isn't an issue. It's the potential for hydrogen to pick up dust, and then so any dust in the pipeline could basically sandblast the internal corners of bends and this sort of thing. So there is that sort of potential, but the mitigating factor, and it's work that's going on at Spade Adam now, is to understand because the viscosity and specific gravity of hydrogen is so very much less. Yes. We need to understand the potential for dust pickup compared to natural gas. It will be different. So, we might have, it might be moving 3 times quicker, but it might not have any effect whatsoever on dust pickup. So, yeah.
So will you need new compressors then if it's going much faster?
Yeah, on the national system, they'd have to upgrade the compression systems, which is a little bit more than a retooling of the compressors. There's a bit more to it than that. They seem to be the primary hit, and then they've got 1 or 2 metallurgy things to resolve on the national side, because they're operating at 70 odd bar, 80 bar. So at those sorts of pressures, you can get issues with hydrogen attacking the metallics for certain material types. But there's been a lot of work done with Marco gas over in Europe on that one, and some really good solutions seem to be edging towards being proved. I'll leave it at that. So yeah, it's largely quite positive.
Can I stop you there and just double check if there's any other questions that anyone has? Well, considering we're in a CESI event, I think maybe I'll just ask everyone who's been involved either with CESI from the start or in the middle, or now just starting to get involved at the end, what the value of being involved with the CESI consortium has been for you. I'll open that up to everyone who wants to speak. I could shame everybody to speak, but if 1 or 2 of you wanted to say a few words about the value of working with CESI, that I think that would really help Sarah with her future, with the reporting of this project to the Funding Council. Maybe just if you wanted to add just a couple of things about what makes you want to work with universities. Has your experience with CESI been a positive thing that you will continue to work with universities, or is it warned you off for life? I've just had a warning that I've got another meeting to go to that I haven't prepared for. Oh dear. Okay, so maybe have a couple of minutes. Anyone want to speak on that today? So the value of CESI for you.
Well, very, very quickly, in summary, for me, really, in my career, early days, it really cemented the importance of whole systems and taking that approach, which has kind of followed through during my time when I was with Energy Systems Catapult, because they were very much whole systems kind of focused. To most extent they were, but it's actually cemented that as well in some of the principles of the catalyst. It's always been in my mind the importance of that multidisciplinary working to really, engineer that. So some of the principles that underpin CESI that have really helped it deliver what it has and achieve what it has, I'm looking to really continue, and I've learned a lot from it. So many, many thanks to everyone involved. I think it's been a really valuable experience that's actually, helped me understand the energy sector in a slightly different and more enhanced way.
Thanks, David.
I'll pitch in next. So I think that the session we had sponsored by Keith and Integral at our Innovation Festival a couple of years ago, I think broadened my thinking around energy systems, and particularly recognizing, it's obvious really now when you think back, that people are, humans and people are a critical part of that system, and understanding their motivations to change and to accept changes within the system is critical. And that's really where our Fairwater project was born. So I think that having that thought, and then the support from people like Sarah and Keith and Jess's colleagues from NEA into that thinking was critical. So I think that was, bringing those voices together and getting a sort of a more rounded perspective on the challenges was critical.
Thanks, Chris.
To add to the challenges thing, I think the opportunity for an organisation like NEA to be able to share with such a wide range of stakeholders the insights and that lived experience that we see of people, and really what they how they respond to things and what they go through in some really challenging situations is very valuable, and to know that there's a captive audience to be able to have those discussions with is something that's really worthwhile from my perspective.
Thanks, Jess. So I'm maybe got rose-tinted glasses, but I'm only hearing good things, so I'm very pleased to hear that. So I'm going to stop it there if that's okay with everyone. Rhiannon, is that okay? Just let me finish, thank you. So I'd like to thank all the speakers today. I'd like to thank Rhiannon and Lindsay for organising the session. I'd like to thank Sarah Walker for sticking with CESI when Phil Taylor got promoted and left to go to Bristol, and for doing a great job of keeping the good industry going, the industrial collaboration going in Phil's absence. Anyone who's worked with Phil knows that that's where he gets his kicks, is doing these big collaborations. And while he was a loss, we don't see him quite as often as we used to. He's still very much part of the CESI work, but Sarah's done I don't know if anyone agrees, but I think that Sarah's done a sterling job of living up to the old man's shoes, and I'm delighted I was delighted to hear that she'd been made up to Professor as a result of all that good work. So congratulations to CESI and the CESI team, and thank you everyone. And I'll let you go.
Final word for me. Thank you all for presenting today and giving up your time. I think it's been really useful to see the connections and where the CESI outputs have sort of gone to and reached, and it's really great from someone coming in late on the project to meet you all and network. So thank you very much, and we'll see hopefully some of you tomorrow in person. After a week of online events, it will be nice to see you in person tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.